Hello everyone, welcome back to this channel. Thanks for coming back. I know it's been a minute. Just a life update. I have started my credential program, so I've been in summer school all this month starting on June 1st. It means my semester is almost over. That's weird to think about. It's just been a very intense program, so I haven't really had time to film videos. However, I have been a little more active over on Instagram, so feel free to follow me over there to get a little more content. So this video is going to be a little bit of a celebratory video because when I'm filming this, yesterday was the 7-year anniversary of my corneal transplant. So I figured now is a good time to tell that story. Also, I'm going to be talking about how I got a hydrop in my left eye because that's what led to the corneal transplant. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep on watching. So a hydrop forms on the innermost layer of the cornea. In my case, this happened because the keratoconus was so far progressed and my cornea was so thin that the innermost layer ruptured. Now when that rupture occurred, all of the water or the fluid from inside of my eye rushed into that tear and created a blister-like formation. So how that happened with me, I remember I was 17, I was a senior in high school. It was around September, and I remember this because I was involved with FFA, which if you don't know what that is, that's Future Farmers of America, and I raised pigs at the time, so I was taking my pig to fair, and it was setup day, so I think it was like a Wednesday, and I just remember having a lot of irritation in my eye that day. Like it felt like something was inside of my eye, but my eye didn't necessarily look irritated, so I couldn't really figure out what was going on. And fair time is a very, very busy time for everyone involved, so I kind of just had to grin and bear it. Like I couldn't really do anything about it at the time. But after that weekend, I was able to go to a doctor, and that's when I was told that I had a hydrop. Now hydrops are they're pretty rare. I was told that they only happen in about like 2% to 5% of all keratoconus patients. So the fact that it was happening and I was already pretty young was kind of an anomaly. I remember all of the staff that was at the doctor's office had never actually seen a hydrop in real life. So everyone wanted to come in to take a look at my eye, and I let them because I thought it was kind of funny. So the hydrop kept forming, it started out clear, like a clear bubble on the inside of my eye. Like you couldn't necessarily see it from the outside, only I could. However, as it progressed, it got bigger and it actually turned to like a whitish blue color. So it was very visible on the outside. I was in high school at the time, so that led to a little bit of teasing. I wouldn't say it was bullying, it was just my friends kind of making fun at me. They called me Blue Eye, and I didn't appreciate it at all, but it is what it is. It's not a big deal. The treatment for hydrops, I remember I had to put in a saline ointment. I can't remember the percent of it, but it is just an over-the-counter. You can get it at any drugstore. And I remember having some drops. I'm not sure what kind. They were probably like antibacterial, I'm assuming. So I was on a pretty intense treatment for that. Hydrops they're very irritating, to say the least. I'd say it's probably like the most irritated my eye had ever been outside of recovering from surgeries. So it was not a fun time, to say the least. I even got prescribed some numbing drops that I could only use like a couple times a day. However, they didn't really help, to be honest. I honestly feel like it made it worse. It created a really large burning sensation in my eye, so I chose not to use them very often. Now my hydrop lasted about 2 months roughly. Like I said, it started in about September And it was probably around November that it finally started to go down in size and appearance. Now, some people, when they have a hydrop, it completely goes away, but mine did leave a scar, and that scar was right over my pupil, so I couldn't see anything out of my left eye. Now, I was never diagnosed as legally blind or anything like that, but I couldn't see anything out of my left eye. This whole time, I had just been wearing glasses. At this point, I had stopped wearing contacts completely. So that's the story of my hydrop. Now, since I had the scar on my cornea and I couldn't see out of my eye, I needed the corneal transplant. Now, it's my understanding that the type of transplant that I got was the kind where the majority of your original cornea is removed. Then a donor cornea is draped over your existing cornea, and then it is sewn together with a couple layers of very, very thin sutures. I had my surgery on June 20th, 2013. I was 18 at this time. So I was definitely a little scared to have this done. This was my first major surgery in my life. However, I found that there was more benefits to this transplant than drawbacks. So I just focused on being able to have vision in my left eye again. I was way more excited about that than I was scared about having to have a surgery. I don't remember there being much preparation before, the days leading up to the surgery. I'm sure there were probably some drops I had to put in my eye, but it was quite unremarkable. So if you are preparing for one, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now, the day of the surgery, I was with my mom and we went to the surgery center, and I was getting prepped for all that. They asked me what surgery I was having done, what eye it was going to be on, all of that. And since I was 18, I had to fill out my own paperwork and everything, provide my insurance cards. Pretty normal stuff. The first little hang up happened when I was getting the IV drip put in. So the nurse who was doing that actually infiltrated my vein. If you don't know what that means the vein swelled up and prevented any fluid from going into the vein. And that was done on, I believe it was my right arm. So when the anesthesiologist came in to give me the anesthetic, she noticed that the bag was still full. So she took the IV out, and she actually had to put it into my hand, which, if you ever had that done, it's a bit painful. It's not a fun time. I would not recommend it. It was actually on this day that coined the term toddler hands. The anesthesiologist, as she was putting it in to my hand, she's like, "Oh, you have such cute little toddler hands." And to this day, my mom still says, "Oh, you have cute little toddler hands." And it's kind of like a big joke in my family. I thought that was the funny side of it. After that, it was all chill from there. And now, if you don't know, the only reason they knock you out is to put more anesthetic into your eye. They put it right in here. So you can imagine, if you were awake, having a needle that close to your eye would be very, very scary. So they put you out for it. So if you're worried about that, don't worry about it, because you will not remember, you will not feel a thing. So once all of the anesthetic was, and I remember backtracking a little bit, I remember it wasn't until I was being rolled back into the operating room that I got very, very nervous. I was actually visibly shaking. I was so nervous, and I think it was just because I had never had a surgery before. But again, it's a temporary situation. Once you're in the surgery, you're not going to remember anything. Now, for the actual surgery, they do sedate you. So you are conscious and somewhat aware of what's going on. But I don't even remember anything, really. I remember waking partially up from being knocked out, and there was a white sheet over my whole face, and I could hear the doctors talking, but like I said, I can't remember what they were saying or anything. So it was a pretty chill experience. And then after surgery, I just remember leaving, going back to a hotel room, and I just fell asleep. I had patches on my eye. It was all taped up. There was cotton around it, so my eye was protected when I went to sleep. They said I could not get water on my face yet, so I couldn't wash my face, I couldn't take a shower. And the rest of the day, it was just sleeping off the anesthetic. I don't remember much pain for that day. The next morning, I had a follow-up appointment. So I remember waking up, and this was, I think, like maybe the most traumatic part of the experience. I had to take the eye patch off of my eye. I was very scared of what my face was going to look like. I think most of it was in my head, because when I took it off, my eye was definitely droopy, very droopy. It was pretty red, and there was a lot of matting. Like, my eye had watered throughout the night, and since there was a patch, there was nowhere for it to go, so there was like little white strings. It definitely looked pretty creepy and kind of freaked me out a little bit. But the follow-up appointment, I got prescribed all of the drops. Now I'll talk about the treatment. I remember having to put in a certain drop. I don't remember which one. It was a steroid drop though. Had to put it in 4 times a day. And I believe there was another drop, probably an antibacterial drop, twice a day. And that regimen went on for a couple of months, and I was on my anti-rejection steroid drops for about, I want to say about 3 years or so. For me, it wasn't a big deal to have to put in drops all the time. I figured it was just part of my life and something that I had to do. So if you're about to do that, I wouldn't overthink it too much. It's just, it's part of what you have to do now. And just remember, it's all part of the process, and it ultimately is benefiting you. So I think a lot of people have questions about what the healing process is like. Now, I was never prescribed any like hard painkillers. I was just told to take ibuprofen, and I honestly feel like I needed something more sometimes. I remember the recovery pain was pretty intense some days. I spent most of that summer like laying on the couch, and I remember having a cool washcloth over my face, and that was really the only way I could find some relief. However, I was actually doing that too frequently, and I was actually slowing down the healing process because I had the washcloth on my face for too long. So I had to stop doing that to the extent that I was. I remember being told the healing process was only like a couple of weeks. However, I felt it was more like a couple of months. I was fortunate to still be living with my parents, and I didn't have a job, and I wasn't going to school since it was summertime. So if you're about to get this surgery, I would recommend doing it around like a summer vacation or a winter vacation if that's possible. Eventually, the healing just happened naturally. The pain got less and less over time. I think the next part of the recovery was arguably more painful than the actual surgery recovery, and that was when I had to get all of the sutures removed. Now, there are 2 layers of stitches that get put into your eye. One is like a continuous stitch. I think they called it like a cookie cutter stitch, and that's when it's kind of like this all around your eye. Like, it's one thread that goes all the way through the cornea, and that's the top layer. And now underneath that, I believe there are like kind of like X-shaped stitches that kind of come out 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. So I had the first layer of stitches removed by my doctor. It was probably within the first year of the surgery. And I remember the pain and irritation after getting that was pretty intense, but it only lasted for about a day. the rest of the stitches become loose by themselves, and then they had to be removed by a doctor. The stitches just naturally become loose from blinking all the time, but it can be irritating because depending on where the stitch is in your eye, it'll poke straight up like that and be poking your eyelid. I went through a lot of irritation, and there were times when I even thought I was rejecting my cornea because the pain and irritation was just so intense. It took probably about another year or so to get all of them removed. And now whenever you get the stitches removed, it actually changes your vision because the light is refracting differently. So I was experiencing a lot of vision changes, and since they was all changing so quickly, it's not like I could just go get a new pair of glasses every time that I got a stitch out. So again, I couldn't really effectively see out of my left eye quite yet. Eventually, all of the stitches came out, and my vision has been pretty stable since then. I'm not sure what it is uncorrected, but with correction, the vision in my left eye is around 20/40 or so. So that's pretty good in my opinion. So that is the majority of my story. Now I am just correcting with glasses. My left eye does still cause some irritation. Every so often I am very light sensitive. I cannot go outside even for like a second in the daytime without sunglasses. I'd say that's like the biggest hindrance. I always have to have sunglasses with me, and I actually have the kind that fit over your glasses, so I always have these big bulky glasses. I don't really find them irritating or a nuisance or anything. It's just who I am, it's just part of my life. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. I'm doing well, haven't had any signs of rejection throughout this whole time. One story that I do remember that I haven't touched on was I was using some steroid drop, and I don't remember the name of it, but it did cause the pressure in my eye to be elevated, so it caused lots of headaches. So if you are on any steroid drops and you are getting frequent headaches, make sure you talk to your doctor about it, because it could be your eye pressure is increased, and that's not a good thing. You don't want to deal with that. And after that, I was just put on a different steroid, and I remember that one was fluorometholone, and I remember that because it's abbreviated FML, which I thought was kind of funny. I hope this story helped you. I hope it gave you some relief that there is life on the other side of having a corneal transplant. Please let me know if there are any further questions. You can comment them down below or follow me over on Instagram and ask them over there. I do want to try to be a support for anyone who might need it with this, because it like I said, it can definitely be a little scary in the beginning. So thanks for watching again. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!